I thought this series couldn't surprise me after 115 books, but I was wrong. This book is bonkers. The police can't solve a kidnapping mystery, so they call in a telepath to solve the case for them. These idiots have access to Nancy Drew, and they decide to pick Richard Topham as their lead detective. No wonder they can't solve any cases on their own.
Argo Fump Book Review. Argo Fump Book Review.
Nancy goes to a party where she overhears Sharon Crane arguing with her ex-boyfriend, Tommy Rio. Sharon leaves the party early. The next morning, Sharon's father calls Nancy and says Sharon's gone missing. Sharon's father is Police Captain Philip Crane. He's a new character who's never been mentioned before, but the book pretends that he and Nancy are old friends who often work together. Throughout the entire book, I found myself wishing that Nancy's high-ranking police officer friend had been Chief McGinnis. That would have worked so much better, even if it would have been weird to learn he has a daughter around Nancy's age. The case has a ticking clock because Sharon is a diabetic who needs an insulin refill within 3 days. The only suspect besides Tommy is a recently released convict named Eddie Hill. Both suspects are angry when Nancy questions them. Bess takes Nancy to meet a famous psychic named David LeGrand. He's very handsome, with wonderful eyes. His psychic tricks are so convincing, Nancy half thinks they're real. David's performance is cut short when the police ask him to find Sharon. So once again, Nancy will be solving a case with a good-looking guy. He's charming as he talks about his psychic powers and the kidnappings that he's solved in the past. Nancy sees a masked figure hiding behind a dumpster. He's following her for no real reason, besides for the fact that he's important later, so they need to introduce him now. The next day, a ransom note arrives. David uses his psychic powers. He touches the note and concentrates on the energy reading. It leads him to an abandoned warehouse, where Nancy finds Sharon's jacket. Hidden in the cuff is a note from Tommy. Crane gets emotional, and Brenda Carlton asks for a private interview with David. "Back off, Brenda! He is Nancy's love interest, not yours!" A love triangle with Nancy and Brenda probably would be awesome, though. Bess takes Nancy back to the psychic convention to meet Madame Tatiana. She's a stereotypical fortune teller. She pretends she predicted the kidnapping because a few days ago she said there was danger. Nancy is shocked when Madame says, "Your friend has a secret. Something up her sleeve." That's just like the victim's jacket! Either Madame is psychic, or Nancy has never heard the phrase "something up her sleeve" before. David has more psychic vibrations, which lead him to one of Sharon's earrings. David looks into Nancy's eyes for a long time, as he says he's fantasized about being her partner. Crime-solving partner, that is. The police attempt to set a trap for the culprit during the ransom drop-off, but the culprit doesn't fall for the trick. He leaves an angry message, which sounds suspiciously similar to one of the two suspects. Nancy just happens to be nearby when the masked man robs a drugstore. This coincidence is a little hard to believe, considering the scene takes place at 3 a.m. Nancy chases after him. He escapes, but he drops his bag of stolen goods at one point. The bag starts leaking liquid, which allows Nancy to trail him back to his hideout. She finds the room where they've been keeping Sharon. The masked man and his unknown boss attack Nancy. She's knocked out with chloroform. Nancy wakes up the next day, shortly before David and Crane arrive. David says he used his psychic powers to locate her. Why can't he do that to locate the kidnapping victim? The two of them kiss passionately. Nancy's not sure if her feelings are powered by love or chloroform. I repeat, she's not sure if this is love or chloroform. Only the Nancy Drew files would have this dilemma. The case is solved when Nancy returns to Madame Tatiana. The cards tell her that Nancy's in love with a man who's a liar. Nancy realizes, oh no, David is a villain! He's not really psychic. He kidnaps people, then pretends to save them so he can become famous. Nancy confirms David's alibi is false. It does not match what he said in his interview with Brenda. Nancy tries talking to David, but he claims he has urgent business and he runs away. At the next ransom drop-off, the police put a paint bomb in the bag of money. The bomb goes off a few minutes after the masked man takes the bag. The police follow the trail of paint. The man evades capture by dropping the money bag and changing into a fresh set of clothing. Nancy recognizes the masked man as one of David's former assistants. Nancy goes back to Madame Tatiana to ask her how she solved the mystery. Under pressure, Madame admits she knows David is a fake psychic because she recognized some of the phony tricks he uses in his performances. Off-screen, the masked man bungles his attempt to give Sharon some insulin. He's forced to drop her off at the hospital. Crane is so happy to have Sharon back, he declares that the case is officially closed. He refuses to spend any more time trying to identify the kidnappers. This guy is pretty incompetent for a police captain. When Nancy accuses David, Crane says Nancy's just jealous because David is way more successful than her. Once again, Nancy needs Madame Tatiana to solve the mystery and save the day. When David returns to town, Madame pretends to use her psychic powers to find a picture of David's accomplice. She finds insulin inside David's travel bag. Under all of this pressure, David is forced to let everybody search his room. Nancy finds decisive evidence hidden near his bed wheel. The end. Post-book follow-up. I enjoyed this book because it's so bonkers. That chloroform makeout scene was hilarious to me. I was surprised to find that this book is extremely unpopular due to all the psychic stuff. Nancy Drew is well established as a skeptic who doesn't believe in ghosts or the supernatural. It's extremely out of character for her to half believe in psychics for most of the book. Nancy doesn't solve the mystery herself as much as she repeatedly visits Bess's personal psychic who solves the mystery for her. As a mystery, the book is not very good. I identified David as the culprit quite early on, because he magically knows where all the evidence is hidden. It's fairly obvious Eddie and Tommy are fake-out suspects, because Nancy has nothing to do with them after Chapter 2. They don't entirely disappear from the story, but it's not like Nancy talks to them for a second time. It's a contrived coincidence that Nancy just happens to be nearby when the accomplice robs the drugstore. It's disappointing that nobody actually found the kidnapping victim. The accomplice just gave her up without prompting. The whole point of the fake kidnapping was for David to look like a hero when he found Sharon, so why didn't he pretend to save her like he planned? Another problem with the book is that Nancy solves the mystery too early. Yes, the ransom drop-off and the hospital visit were interesting, but the whole time I was wondering, Nancy knows for sure who the culprit is. Why hasn't David been arrested yet? Overall, it is a bad book, but I found it to be enjoyably bad. If I tried to take all the weird psychic stuff seriously, I would probably hate it. And I would definitely hate Nancy cheating on Ned with the culprit yet again. I give Nancy Drew Files number 116, Under His Spell, a 5 out of 10.